I did actually get arrested in this story, and this is a two-part story, and you'll all understand the two parts when I get to the end, as most two-part stories go. So the first part goes that one day, as I was working at this broke-ass sports bar, we all kind of decided that alcohol was the payment because we couldn't cash our checks at the bank. So needless to say, I was wasted as shit. Now, little known fact about working at a restaurant, they're all drug addicts. Or alcoholics, one or the other. I wasn't exactly an alcoholic, but I was having a pretty good time. And a friend of mine who deemed me sweet petite made some really nice pipes out of carrots. So we were just a little bit high from our last break and a little bit drunk from the payment for all of our work that we had done, right? And we decided to go on an adventure and find some mushrooms because that sounded like a really good idea at the time. I was supposed to bring you a beer. I'm totally sorry.
Oh, man.
I forgot. Yay, there we go. Beer for the musician. So we drive off in my 1984 Buick that I lived in at the time. This is a long time ago, by the way. It also had a touchscreen computer in the center console. It was pretty badass. And we're trying to find our mushrooms, and we're obviously wasted, and I, for whatever reason, had the soundtrack to SpongeBob. And I was just blaring the fun song because we were having fun, which goes, F is for friends that do stuff together, U is for you and me. I won't torture you with the rest of the song, but it's pretty fantastic. And when I'm stoned, when I used to get stoned, I drive really, really slow and cautiously. So I was going 20 miles an hour, maybe tops, on the connector. And I got pulled over for going too slow. And when I pulled over, and granted, let me tell you the small side story that my friend, who's looking for mushrooms with me, has a bag of pot in each shoe, and I had just bought the most glorious smelling bag of chronic of my life. I'll never know to this day what it actually felt like because it was eventually confiscated by the Boise Police Department, but we got pulled over, obviously, and because I'm blaring the fun song, it's a little bit obvious that something hinky is going on here. So he asks me to search my car, and my dad used to be a detective back in the small town that I came from, so I knew at least just, like, don't fuck with the police. Okay, go ahead and search my car. And there's like a whole life's worth of shit in this car, so he's got a lot of stuff to search through if he's going to find anything. And he found the pipe that I had just recently purchased, as well as the very glorious smelling bag of chronic I had just recently purchased. And he didn't do anything to my friend at all, who had 2 bags of marijuana in his shoes. So he gave me a ticket for possession and paraphernalia, did not give me any sort of like field sobriety test or anything. He just let me go with this ticket for possession and paraphernalia. And I thought, oh shit, because I've never had a record in my life. I'd really never been in any trouble. And up until about like 8 months prior to this, when I got divorced and lost my home, I had never been a drug addict or done anything. So I was really freaking out. And My friend was really cool, and when we got to where we were going and we got our mushrooms that we were looking for, he gave me one bag of pot, and I still had some blueberries, which was nice, and we had a pretty nice night. Now, I tried to take care of this ticket when it told me to take care of it, and they didn't have any record of me, and they gave me a number to call, so I kept calling this number every week, trying to take care of this ticket, and a couple months went by of me calling this number and them not having any idea why I was calling them. And I thought, oh, it's my lucky, this is my one get out of jail free ticket. And after that, I just didn't think anything of it. Part 2. Several, as in like 11 to 12 months later, I found myself in Weiser on the 4th of July blowing up illegal fireworks because it's not that bad there. You're kind of close to the Oregon border where you can blow off these fireworks. And my boyfriend at the time, before he became my baby daddy, was intoxicated. So I was driving and I hadn't honestly drank. I don't drink in Weiser because I used to be a Mormon Sunday school teacher. And, my dad's a detective there, so I lay low. I keep it cool in Weiser. And I'm soberly driving down the street, and I'm blind as a bat. And my baby daddy, future baby daddy at the time, was like, deer. And I said, what? Deer? What? Deer? What the fuck are you talking about? There's a fucking deer in the road, he says. And I do not see this deer. Eventually, I obviously saw the deer, and I started slamming on the brakes of what is now not my Buick because I had wrecked it prior to this. Not intoxicated, just a really stupid accident, but his Buick that already looks like, please pull this car over, we're obviously up to something no good. And so I slam on the brakes, and this little doe just hops across the road, all happy-like, and I think, oh, I'm in the clear. And then this retarded little tiny buck hops out into the road after her, and in fairness to me, we hit each other, okay? He clipped the corner of my car, or his car, Andreas's car, at the same time that I clipped him. And I felt terrible. So we come to a stop and we pull over, and just down the street for whatever reason, and I call my dad because my dad's just a little bit ahead of us, and he always has a pistol on his hip because we're in fucking Weiser, okay? And I don't have a pistol on my hip. And this deer is suffering, and I really just want to kill it and maybe take it home and like skin it and butcher it because that's what you do in Weiser, all right? It's a waste of meat not to. And before my dad gets here, this cop pulls up who had heard the whole accident because he just happened to be home at 3 o'clock in the morning on his break, and he was this young man that I knew, and I used to teach his kids Sunday school in the Mormon church. So he pulls up and he's like, oh, Sister Walker, because my name was Walker at the time. What are you up to out here? And then we've got all these empty beer cans in the back, and like, oh, God. So this deer hit me, Brother Thomas. I think you should take care of that deer. And he doesn't know what to do. He's just like, oh, shit, this fucking deer, And my dad pulls up and he's like, Matt Thomas, what the fuck is this deer doing over here? And so they take care of the deer, and they put the poor deer out of its misery. And I still feel terrible about this deer because, one, he calls the Forest Game Service, which is just going to waste every bit of this deer, as the Forest Game Service does in Idaho. And I'd much rather just eat this young deer because they're delicious when they're young. I'm sorry, but they are. And so he shoots the deer, and I'm explaining to him what happened. He doesn't really say anything to me, but he does give me a good ominous look like, what is this girl up to? You used to teach my kids Sunday school, and I just am embarrassed. So we are stuck in Weezer now for the entire night because we got a headlight out that we'll obviously be pulled over for. And in the morning, we go to drive back to Boise because I got to work at 7 o'clock in the morning at this art supply store in Garden City. And we make it all the way to about half a mile before we get home. And we get pulled over because the turn signal is out. Obviously, because I hit a deer and our light is now bolted to the top of the car instead of in its place. And I'm not driving, obviously, because my future baby daddy has cut me off of driving privileges in his Buick after a really long night of ridicule and embarrassment for this whole incident. And he takes both of our driver's license, and I have a warrant out for my arrest. And because it's been nearly a year, I have no idea why I'm being arrested. And I'm just freaking the fuck out. And at this time, the only thing that the cop comments on is this handheld mortar launcher that my future baby daddy had made out of some pipe and a few other metal objects so that you could launch mortars into the sky in your hand. It was like a bazooka. It was fucking fantastic. And he puts me in the back and he says, I don't know why you have a warrant out for your arrest, but that handheld mortar launcher is pretty fantastic, right? And I'm just like sobbing because I'm traumatized in this moment of being in the back of a cop car that is not my father's cop car. And I'm not in the front seat, and I'm actually handcuffed. So he takes me in, and he gets my fingerprints, and they take all my possessions. And I think, okay, just sit here and be cool, and, Andreas will bail you out. Everything's going to be okay. And I think maybe it's like some sort of speeding ticket because I'm kind of notorious for speeding, or at least I was at that time. I have no idea that it is this possession and paraphernalia ticket that I got a year prior to that. And while I was sitting in the holding cell and people are coming in and people are going out and there's all this business going on, I was there for like 7 hours. And I started to get a little bit frustrated because every time I curled up into the fetal position in my chair, this great big asshole of a babysitter that they call a jailer keeps telling me to sit properly in my chair. And finally I was like, you're a fucking pig. I don't give a shit what you think. I'm going to sit with my feet up here and rub my ass on the chair a little bit. And about 2 seconds after I called him a fucking pig, my paperwork came through, and I knew that it was my paperwork because I'd sitting on his side of the jail cell lots of times prior to this. So I knew kind of what was going on, and he got all my paperwork together and my possessions and put them aside and just let me sit there for another 3 hours. And in those 3 hours, I just got more and more irate and more mouthy, which really doesn't help. So if you ever find yourself sitting in the waiting cell of the Boise City, Ada County, any police department, just don't say anything at all. Just be quiet, maybe cry to yourself, and, don't talk to the jail occupants because they don't like that. I struck up a few conversations that were pretty pleasant, but that guy was really pissed. And finally, this other lady came in, and she just walked in off of her break, I assume, and saw my stuff and was like, oh, Crystal Moore, and called me up, and I was like, oh, that motherfucker. And I got out, and, I had a few fines and whatnot, but that is my one crime story where I actually got convicted of the crime and ended up having to pay the very sizable fine and working for a good 7 months while I was pregnant laying tile, carpet, and linoleum to pay off that fine from the possession and paraphernalia ticket.